All right, Coach. Now we're going to discuss more of just the recruiting process in general. Um, we'll still get into how a lot of these questions pertain to your program. But my first question is, over the course of an entire year, can you explain what the recruiting process looks like for you? And, just where, you go as far as traveling, who do you look for trusted sources? How much boots on the ground scouting do you do, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. No, I think that's a great question. And, the best answer I can give you is that from a recruiting perspective, it never stops. It's a 12-month process, right? And, like I said earlier, we find players different ways. And, it's one of the reasons why we have assistant coaches, right? Like you said, you have to have boots on the ground and you have to have a presence. So a perfect day from a recruiting perspective in the summer, I'm at a game, Coach Jake's at a game, and while I'm at that game, I'm answering emails and looking at video of guys online and even, doing research on guys that are on the field that way too. So social media has been a big deal for us, right? I'm not a big Twitter guy really until I started here. I think it's a necessary evil. I think it can do a lot of good in terms of giving kids exposure. But the answer is that you got to rely on relationships. I think that's the biggest thing. There's folks that I've been talking to for 3-4 years about college baseball, the kind of guys that they have at programs. And, those are the guys that I went to first when I was starting this thing to try to build a foundation and a base for where we're at right now.
All right. So earlier in the first part of the interview, we talked about some of the advantages you have as a JUCO coach, but let's do the flip side now. What are the challenges and limitations that you face in this position as well?
I think it's really simple. It's two things. Okay, when a kid is 5 years old in the backyard playing wiffle ball, he's not daydreaming, okay, about playing junior college baseball in Solon, Ohio, okay, at the Division II level. The second thing I would say on top of that, and the two are connected, is that just awareness, okay? People don't know the value of junior college. People don't know the value of community colleges. So it's a challenge that, community college head coaches, recruiters have been, fighting since the dawn of time, but it's something that, you just push through. And any situation that you're in as a coach, as a player, there's going to be challenges, right? And the key is to not let these challenges really affect how you move along, right? You got to keep pushing forward. So that's how we look at that.
An important part of being a junior college coach is, when those players have exhausted their 2 years with you, is helping them find somewhere to play at the next level. So what are some ways that junior college coaches build those relationships with four-year schools and expand their reach for their players?
That's a great question. So fortunately, I've got coaching experience at the 4-year level, at the NAIA level, and also Division II NCAA. Like I mentioned earlier, one of our other assistant coaches has Division III coaching experience. So, from a school perspective, when you're playing in those leagues, playing in those conferences, you get to develop relationships with those coaches, right? Like I said earlier, Jake's an alumni from Akron, okay, which is a Division I school. And, when you play at that level, you network and you find relationships that way. It comes down to, how wide of a region a kid's willing to look at. If you tell me you're willing to play anywhere, there's a really good chance that we can find a fit for you. Just in terms of, the data and the resources that we have, we try to take advantage of technology. Applications like Field Level have been really instrumental in what we're doing. We've got a database of nationwide coaches. It's 60 pages long. We're more than happy to promote you to any level, any school that you're looking for, right? But it kind of comes down to, and this is what we were talking about earlier, it comes down to fit for guy, right? If you're a junior college kid and you play your tail off for us, but you're not quite a Division I player, you're going to have to come to the realization, you need to look at D2 or NAIA. So we try to mentor our kids. We try to give our kids perspective, but, ultimately we put a lot of trust in our kids on the field and in the classroom. And the same goes for when they're, looking to move on to that next school, but we definitely try to give them as much information as we can so they can make an educated decision to move on, right? That's the whole reason you're coming to junior college, is to get out of junior college too, right? It's a launching pad.
Talk about some of the times in the past where you have taken chances on a character issue. How was it resolved? Did it work out? And, are there any lessons that you've learned from those experiences?
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, everybody has character issues. Nobody's perfect. I don't expect our players to be perfect. It just comes down to, the degree and the severity of why there might be, some obvious character issues. And dirt honesty is that it usually comes down to their upbringing, okay, or their socioeconomic background. Or, unfortunately, we talk to a lot of kids that lose their fathers at young ages, okay? So you start to find out this kid's history, okay, and then it starts to make sense why somebody, might not pass the sniff test right away. But the more you get to know people, the more you understand them. And like I said, we're looking to give people opportunities and not the other way around. We're looking to give people second chances, not third and fourth chances, but everybody deserves a shot at this.
This question is something that I hope the kids really prepare for after hearing your answer. I feel a lot of coaches have similar answers to this, but when you're talking to a recruit for the very first time, whether in person or through the phone, are there any questions? Generally, what are the first questions that you ask them?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this might sound corny, but it's usually, how's it going? Catch me up. I know I'm just calling you out of the blue, but, I like what I saw. Your coach had some, really good to say about you, and just want to kind of feel you out, kind of see where you're at with things, and, see if it makes sense for us to keep talking. Something that Coach Jake is giving me really good advice in, and it's, he's got, some business experience like I do. So in sales and marketing, developing relationships with people and developing trust with folks before you get down to the nitty-gritty details of, hey, come to this school, right? We're the right place for you, right in your face. And that's not to say that, for some kids, they want to hear that, right? And some kids do want to go with the first coach that they talk to, right? But like you said, there's definitely value in doing your due diligence when you're looking at schools, doing your research, getting to know the coaches, okay? And then making an informed decision about where you're going to go for the next semester or two of your life, right?
So what misconceptions do you think high school athletes have been making about college baseball in general and the recruiting process? Give them a reality check on the nature of college recruiting.
Baseball is a business, just simply put, right? If you're not good enough, if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to get opportunities. So it's, a reflection of where our society is at right now. There's opportunities for everybody, if you can afford it. Sometimes, you can't. You got to get creative and resourceful that way. It just comes down to, putting energy and effort into what your passion is and, following opportunities, right? And trying to make informed decisions, right? Because if you go on Twitter, you see Division I programs right now, 2022s, okay, 2023s, okay? So when you pay $300 to go to that camp at an Ivy League school and you've got a 2.5 GPA, you need to maybe connect the dots that, maybe there's 100 other kids here for a reason and they're charging $300 to do it. I'm not saying that I don't understand it, but from my perspective, always being at a small school, knowing the way small school budgets run, I would much rather drive in vans to places, okay, play in community facilities, okay, than have to charge kids $300 to go to a prospect camp under false pretenses, period, okay? We spend less so we don't have to fundraise, and we charge $25 for our prospect events. So anybody can do it, period. Nobody's going to get overlooked.
I guess in your opinion, how important is it to find an honest and accurate scouting evaluation, and where can a player find one?
I think it's important, right? And it comes back to players being, resourceful, right? And scouting reports, showcase events, it's always going to be a part of our equation from a recruiting perspective. We're always going to look at it. But if we're looking to invest scholarship dollars for a player, playing time opportunities, if we're going down that road, you better believe we're going to cross-check everything that we see on the internet. And you better believe we're going to talk to his travel coach and his high school coach. Dirt honesty is that numbers do get inflated, okay, from a showcase prospect camp perspective, okay? And it's out of necessity, right? If a showcase doesn't have talented players, what's going to draw those players, in the future for participating, okay? It's in their own best interest to have guys with really good measurables, okay? And if you go on Twitter, you'll find guys that that joke all the time about how catching metrics are presented at PBR camps, okay? And what you see is that 16-year-old kids in Northeast Ohio have better pop times than, JD Realmato, you know what I mean? And they have better arms than Gary Sanchez. So, baseball coaches are smart, right? And it comes down to ethics, right? If you're going to operate a business, you're going to choose how to operate it, okay? And I'm not telling those companies how to operate, but I'm going to tell you that, I carefully consider everything that we do as a baseball program, and it's something I'm very proud of. We do it honestly.
Coach, this is a family effort, the recruiting process. So for the parents out there, please explain what you feel their role should be, and what are some mistakes that you see them routinely make?
Yeah, I definitely think that parents are an important part, right? And if you take it a couple steps further and you look at, once these guys get here in the fall and once we're playing spring games, these parents are the ones in the stands, right? So having good parents is a big time indicator of having a good program, right? And parents' character, parents' conduct is also a direct reflection of what that kid is probably going to act like, right? So, these kids are young and they lack the perspective in it as an adult. And so a lot of times their behavior is going to look like their environment. So I've seen parents absolutely, make the visit, okay? Just parents that had charisma and were ambitious and they were their kid's own marketing agent, right? And, as a coach, you realize, right, I mean, that parent, their kid's athletic career in some cases, but at the same time, you got to let your kid talk, okay? Your kid's the one that's going to go to school here, all right? Why would you drive 8 hours and not let your kid talk for 2 minutes? You know what I mean? From a coaching perspective, you have to try to get to know people. And if we're talking with out-of-state folks especially, you get one chance to make that impression. And if the parent's talking the whole time on that recruiting visit and the kid doesn't say a word, how are you going to get a college to commit to that kid? Because you have to use what information is available to you. And if the kid's quiet, the coach is going to assume that the kid's not really that interested in the school. So it's a fine balance with parents, right? I get it. You got to try to protect your kids and you're looking out for your children, right? But at the same time, in most cases, you got to acknowledge that you're not a baseball person, most likely. Okay. Most likely you're a professional that works at a company or their own business and, has a good background with that sort of thing. And what I tell folks is like, listen, I give people advice on one thing. Okay. And it's baseball, period. I don't try to tell doctors how to do their job, how to, people do this and that. You got to trust the coach, right? And you got to have relationships at the youth level and at the high school level to where you can ask maybe some of the inappropriate questions that you might bring up to a coach during a visit otherwise that you don't want to ask, right? You don't want to ask for scholarship away. You don't want to ask how much money you got, okay? You don't want that to be the first question that you ask. And a lot of times that is, right? And you got to think about it. If you're an adult and you're going to a job interview, is that going to be your first question? How much are you giving to my kid, right? And, if you're on a tour and you're asking about apparel, okay, and Nike this and Adidas that, and you're showing your values for stuff that really doesn't coincide with what our organization believes, then, it ends up being a bad fit and we kind of move on. But, at the same time, recruiting is about giving opportunities, right? But it's also about kind of finding out who a good fit is. In terms of business, it's like, picking your customers is how I look at it. You want to find the right kids, right?